M.Ferguson. Mr. Ferguson is a long-standing friend of our school, a committed classicist, and highly accomplished and respected professional. Like others of his generation who came to embrace traditional architecture, he's an autodidact who worked patiently to assimilate and master expressions and a meaningful approach to architecture that has long been neglected. Mr. Ferguson received a Bachelor of Architecture from Carnegie Mellon University in 1978 and a Master of Architecture from Princeton University in 1982. He apprenticed at firms in Pittsburgh, Boston, and Princeton before moving to New York in the early 1980s. His introduction to traditional architecture came with his early work on renovations to houses in Tuxedo Park and Croton-on-Hudson. The experience led him to a position at Parrish Hadley Associates, where he collaborated with interior designers and artisans in the creation of new residences guided by traditional design principles. While at Parrish Hadley, he joined forces with fellow architect Oscar Schematic, who had worked with Robert Stern, and in 1988 they formed the firm known today as Ferguson Schematic Architects. Their work has been widely published in books and magazines, including Architectural Digest, House Beautiful, House and Garden, and Town and Country. The firm has received numerous awards, including the Arthur Ross Award for Architecture from the Institute of Classical Architecture in Classical America. The company employs many of our alumni to such extent that working there is now jokingly referred to as a Notre Dame post-professional degree experience. And in that sense, we might refer to Mr. Ferguson as a kind of proxy faculty member. Mr. Ferguson is now chair of the ICA's board of directors. He has also served as chair of the Institute, where he was responsible for significant improvements in the group's outreach efforts and education program. He's helped to cultivate in the ICA an understanding of the classical language of architecture as a rich, poetical, formal system that gives buildings grace and character, but is adapted in accordance with the building's civic role and in deference to its type and context. We're delighted to host Mark Ferguson tonight. Please join me in extending him a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Richard, for those kind words. It's very flattering. And it's a privilege to be here. I was greeted this morning by the topping out of your new architecture school, magnificent building. Saw the cupola erected, beautiful job by Mr. Walsh and Company. Really happy. It's auspicious beginning to my day. As I considered a subject for this talk, I knew I wanted you to see Deep Cove. Is this working appropriately? Okay. It's a new country estate, anchored by a summer cottage and multiple outbuildings set in a beautiful natural landscape on the coast of Maine. The image on the screen is Frank Cosentino's portrait of the house. We presented it to the owner when they moved in appreciation for the opportunity to make the house their portrait in architecture. As I thought further about this talk, I also knew I wanted to offer you something more. I found inspiration in a passing comment made by a senior employee, an alumnus of this school. It was made while introducing an intern to our office practices, and it concluded with the statement, "It's just like school." The observation gave me pause because, as Richard said, it's both true and not true. The words were intended to be reassuring, to ease the transition between a familiar place and an unfamiliar place, and to explain something true about our office culture and the design process. But they overlooked the profound differences between school and practice. I think this is it. I want to demystify practice by offering my observations and advice from the broad perspective of real-world business experience and from what I can recall of my own narrow perspective as a recent graduate. I'm certain I was taught the business of architecture in school, but when I was confronted with the need to apply those lessons, I always felt I was learning them for the first time. This is the completed house at Deep Cove in a picture taken about a month ago. Professional photography is very important for us to show potential clients what we can do and to familiarize our newest employees with our firm's history. School is a full immersion in the art of architecture. You study its origins, its history, you practice critical observation skills, study theories of design, practice drawing, and develop the creative skills required to design buildings. School encourages you to think like an artist. Practice is a full immersion in the business of architecture. You learn to sell yourself, to sell your services, and to sell your company. You learn to make business agreements, deliver on those agreements, and stand behind your work. Business teaches you how to keep promises, build relationships, and maintain your reputation. The temperaments required to practice art and business are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they're similar in some important respects. Both require vision, seeing the world the way it is and imagining it the way it could be. Both require creativity, imagining new things that will enlighten and create value for other people. Both require discipline, focus, commitment, patience, and the tenacity to start and finish things. Both require judgment, the values, integrity, self-reflection, and taste to do the right thing. And of course, both have the potential to improve with age. This image memorialized our schematic design. It was our promise to the client and our roadmap for the next 3 years of work. As students of a licensed profession, you know that apprenticeship with a licensed architect is a mandatory prerequisite for practice. Even though most of you will be employees in those early years, you remain the entrepreneur. You are the entrepreneur of your career. Your career is literally your business. You own it. Only you can take responsibility for your skills and the timing of your moves. You must protect your business from harm and position it to benefit from changes in the environment. Nobody else can do that but you. Whatever direction your career takes you, you will learn about yourself, your aptitudes, your interests, your value to others, and the aspect of work you find rewarding. In my early career, I wanted to expand my opportunities to design. In this objective, I was disappointed. I did not realize how many false starts there are in practice and the limited commercial value of my emerging skills. I needed to learn new skills. I was surrounded by capable people, but I found few with the time, patience, and interest to teach me. I realized it was to advance my career, I had to teach myself. This need has never abated. It was a good lesson to learn early. In my apprenticeship, I learned who I did not want to be and what I did not want to do. Before founding my current firm, I left my job 6 times to either live in another city, learn about another practice, go to graduate school, or start my own business. I started my own business twice, both times with clients introduced to me by my employer. I was fired once as an employee and again as a practitioner. On each occasion, I truly felt what it means to be the entrepreneur of my career. This progress photo was taken 1 year before the project was completed. To accomplish this work, it required a very large, well-managed team. A builder, the builder's subcontractors, our firm, a landscape designer, interior decorator, lighting designer, a civil engineer, structural engineer, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, and multiple artisans providing one-of-a-kind products. University education is a foundation and an introduction, but it cannot replicate a commission to build. Unlike the other arts, you must have a license and a client to practice. Despite these limitations, you learn skills that are valuable and much admired in other industries. The ability to define problems, build teams across disciplines, find creative solutions to problems, present conclusions, and meet deadlines are the prerequisites for many careers. These skills will serve you well. The systematic design process you learn here is also well suited to practice. In an office, you will be expected to be in command of a broad range of core skills and to be able to achieve consistent and predictable results under varying and sometimes challenging conditions. It's like playing concert piano. Your audience expects you to play with finesse and to make no discernible mistakes. My university training, unlike yours, offered little explicit or consistent instruction in design, or in a visual language that could be applied to a broad range of architectural programs. This deficiency was both a liability and an asset. To better understand my lack of fluency, I became interested in the origins of abstraction as an idea and as a visual language. During the modern movement, it replaced traditional figurative languages and diminished the range of possible expression in architecture. I was curious to understand its origins, why it had risen to prominence, and why it still captured the imagination of contemporary artists and architects. I thought if I understood it, I might also understand how the figurative quality of traditional architecture could be restored to contemporary practice. These questions propelled me to graduate school, and the answers have guided my career ever since. Entrepreneurship requires energy, vision, and discipline. Entrepreneurs work all the time. They pursue their vision, forge relationships, and generally create their own luck. They work around obstacles and know themselves well enough to seize opportunities when they arise. Some of what I know about business, I learned from books. 2 books by Jim Collins, Built to Last and Good to Great, have been particularly helpful and inspiring. Built to Last is a precedent study of enduring companies. It is a collection of stories about inspired people building something from nothing and sustaining it over a long period of time. Good to Great applies the lessons of the precedent studies to building a successful business. The books are very readable. They're free of jargon and tell real-life stories about people with imagination, taking risks, and using ingenuity to overcome difficulties. I recommend them. Architects are in a service business. We sell expert advice to clients. We help people create places to live, work, play, learn, worship, and otherwise conduct their affairs. We do this by accommodating and giving expression to their needs and aspirations through building designs. When I realized that helping people make a place of their own in the world is the service that drives our business, I was able to see more clearly what is important to my practice. Architects are inherently disadvantaged in the way we communicate our advice. We almost never build full-size facsimiles of a building design. So we must rely on scale drawings, renderings, and models to convey the design. Our clients cannot see or occupy the building at actual size, and therefore are compelled to rely on scale representations and partial mock-ups. It's very difficult to convey the look and feel of a building this way. This is our central dilemma in working with clients. The recent integration of 3D computer modeling in client presentations has helped us enormously to bridge the gap between representation and reality. Many of our clients are design aficionados. They're capable of navigating the visual language of architecture, fashion, and other consumer products. But they're not critics, historians, or architects. They are consumers. They want a beautiful, comfortable, durable building tailored to their needs and tastes. This is our perennial program. Architects are commercial. Our livelihood depends on clients to commission our services. Without them, we cannot build. Over the years, I've come to realize that most of our clients want to be the architect of their building. Some even fear we will hijack their project and design a building they did not ask for and do not want. To allay their fears and give them agency in the process, we must win their trust early through an honest and open collaboration. We must be very good listeners, patient with their suggestions and questions, and gently guide them to an appropriate and beautiful design. When they think that most of the good ideas are theirs, we have succeeded. They're always grateful for what we offer and inevitably surprised that the building is better than they imagined. In offering expert advice, we make promises. This requires clients, consultants, and builders and others to trust us. We must earn this trust every day. We are accountable to paying clients with whom we hold contracts and to governmental authorities from whom we receive our credentials and project approvals. Our business commitments put our future livelihood on the line every day. The consequences of violating this trust, of failing to do what we say we're going to do, can have serious consequences. It can disrupt our operation, create financial penalties, and damage our reputation. Therefore, we harbor a healthy paranoia of the things that could go wrong. And to increase our chances of success, we try to underpromise and overdeliver. We market ourselves by doing good work, maintaining good relations with our clients, supporting our colleagues and allied professions, and conducting ourselves as ambassadors of the firm. We never know who will make our next referral. We take an interest in all projects, large and small, near and far. We cultivate media exposure, not in trade magazines, but in interior design magazines, where potential clients see the residences designed in collaboration with interior decorators next to the work of other decorators and architects in our market. These publications validate our reputation. And after 20 years, we've completed enough good work to produce a monograph, which is now on the bookshelves where future clients look for inspiration. Our reputation is key to future business. To sustain it, we stand behind our work. We do so by maintaining a contingency fund to pay for mistakes, both real and perceived. It is part of the cost of doing business. We are helped by people who know us and vouch for us. Most of our new business comes through referrals. As a general rule, multiple referrals are required for a potential client to contact us. Every successful entrepreneur has at least one person in their past who was instrumental in helping them launch their career. A person who believed in them, made introductions, advocated for them, and offered advice at critical times. This is how we got our start. I co-founded the firm with John Murray and Oscar Shimamian. We conceived of our business as a partnership among equals. Collaboration was embedded in our culture at the beginning, and it shaped the way we work with clients. Although John, Oscar, and I worked independently with clients, we shared the same aesthetic interests, personal values, and business goals. As business partners, we worked very closely and reached every decision by consensus. John was an old classmate and friend from undergraduate school. Oscar was a new friend introduced to me by my wife, Natalie, an architect working in Bob Stern's office. We came together at Parrish Hadley, an interior decorating firm that produced comprehensive residential interiors, from architecture to furnishings. Their work was influenced by Edith Wharton and Ogden Codman, who, in an earlier time, advocated for comfortable, modern, architectural interiors unencumbered by excess. The architects in the Parrish Hadley office provided support for the interior decorators. We were the drafting studio, where architectural backgrounds for decorating schemes and furniture plans were created. We were co-designers, although the furnishings and decorative finishes always defined the project vision and captured the client's imagination. The decorators taught us how to compose comfortable furniture plans, and we taught them how to compose elegant buildings. The decorators were not only our bosses, but also our surrogate clients. They translated the client's needs and desires into rooms that were useful, inviting, and beautiful. We learned that comfort, luxury, custom fit, and a certain understated taste cultivated by a genteel, affluent, high society clientele were their guiding principles. Many of the very fine buildings designed by American architects in the teens and 20s epitomized architectural good taste at Parrish Hadley. and were often the home of their clients. This is the entry hall in one of those houses, and this is the living room in another. To my surprise, the modern movement had little influence on the thinking of the partners at Parish Hadley. The movement had not diminished their appreciation for the beauty of traditional buildings, furnishings, and landscapes, or their confidence in the appropriateness of continuing these traditions. This thinking liberated me from the mandate to give expression to a zeitgeist I could not see, and instead to turn my attention to architecture I could see. The next book I read was The American Vignola. In a short time, the work in the drafting studio grew to a scale that overwhelmed their core business. To better manage it, they suggested an internal separation of practices, to which John, Oscar, and I made a counterproposal to start a new firm for the purpose of serving the architectural needs of their clients. We saw an underserved market for traditional residential architecture that was compatible with their ideas of comfort and visual harmony. They supported our initiative and, with introductions to clients, helped us launch a new business. Two years later, we gained modest recognition and an issue of Progressive Architecture, featuring the work of young architects. The magazine published 2 houses designed for a Parish Hadley client who built them on speculation in Greenwich, Connecticut. In preparing this lecture, I was taken aback by a quotation in the article attributed to me in which I asserted, "We are not committed to classicism. We're more committed to context, to doing the right thing in the right place." I remember cringing then, and I cringed again, because I had not said what I meant. There was nuance in my thought, but not in my words. Although we were proud to be practicing American classicism, we wanted to avoid the limitations of a label. We were intrigued by the multiplicity of building traditions we were discovering, both vernacular and classical, and we saw great potential in regional traditions to inspire new buildings with the power to enhance and lend coherence to their surroundings. We wanted to design new buildings that belong to a larger ensemble and acquire value by engaging in a conversation across generations of builders. The lesson I learned and continue to learn from this experience is to avoid hyperbole and be precise in what I say, especially to the press. Our growth was slow and steady. In the early years, we expanded our business to other building types. With the addition of Don Ratner to our partnership, we expanded into community architecture. In time, however, we learned that our partnership was not sustainable on a personal level, and Don and John went their separate ways. Oscar and I continued to build the firm's core practice of residential architecture, and today, at 90 people, we may be the largest residential practice in the country. We grew the firm from a small studio of assistants, a kind of benign dictatorship, into an organization with a leadership structure and a culture that we believe has the potential to sustain itself for multiple generations. We did this with coaching from Keith Granite, a business consultant and an architect by training, who has written a couple of handbooks based on his experience working with firms like ours. Early on in the 20 years we have worked together, Keith helped us understand and articulate why we practice. It is to make the world more beautiful and humane. He helped us explain how we practice. It is to make a workplace where people can pursue full and rewarding careers. And he helps us live by our core values, to treat people honestly and fairly in productive collaborations. We've structured the business to support our culture. We have an executive committee of 10 people to make key business decisions on a consensus basis. The members of this committee manage our 4 areas of practice: new business, careers, practice, and finance. For individuals, we've described a clear path for advancement. First, one learns to continuously improve one's core competencies. Excellent skills are the foundation of practice. Second, one learns to delegate work to subordinates, to give subordinates the requisite resources, coaching, and encouragement to be successful. Third, one learns to manage teams, to anticipate long-term outcomes, make work plans to achieve these outcomes, assemble, motivate, and coach teams to produce the work and accommodate change when conditions change. Fourth, one learns to sell oneself, the project, and the firm to clients, and especially to potential clients, through careful listening, creative thinking on the spot, and speaking knowledgeably and persuasively to their expectations. This is called rainmaking. Without it, we don't have a business. And last, one learns to sustain an intellectually rich and emotionally positive culture where trust and commitment flourish. Our project on Mount Desert Island in Maine was a significant commission, and it is a good case study in how a project develops in our practice. It began with a dinner party at a client's apartment, recently remodeled by us, among friends with multi-generational summer places in Maine. A copy of our monograph is on the shelf in their dining room, the room pictured here. Our potential client, a couple with children, were among the dinner guests. They revealed their ambition to restore their family's summer place and had an architect in mind. Our client recommended that they talk to us before making a decision. This referral was preceded by others. Our client is the son and daughter-in-law of a client that Parish Hadley introduced to us in our first year in business. Our name was on their mind that evening because our long history with the family, completing multiple projects for both parents and son over the years. The potential client called. I and two colleagues made a date to meet them on the site in Maine on Halloween in 2011. We walked the property and listened carefully to their detailed program. We asked questions and identified with their ambitions. We tried to be good companions and to show that we could have fun together on the long journey they were about to begin. To demonstrate what we could do for them, we suggested a competition to help them select the right firm. We made our pitch in March 2012, and months later met again in Maine to discuss our firm's capabilities and our business terms. We negotiated our agreement and began the project. That process took about a year and a half. Maine's crenellated coastline, rocky shores, and forested land became a place for summer resorts in the 19th century. Mount Desert Island was first popularized by artists, journalists, professors, and their patrons and friends. It was a place where they could enjoy beautiful scenery and spend time hiking, sailing, and entertaining each other. They were called rusticators and found lodging with local fishermen and farmers. As more people flocked to the island, hotels were built, and by 1880, there were 30 hotels, making seasonal tourism the leading industry. By this time, prominent families had begun to build significant summer cottages on Mount Desert Island. Some of these families formed village improvement societies to construct trails connecting the coastal villages to the mountains. In 1901, George Dorr, with others, established a land trust to acquire and preserve land for public use. With a substantial land gift from John D. Rockefeller, the land assembled by the trust became Acadia National Park in 1929, the first national park in the eastern United States. I'm just going to point out that our project Deep Cove is right there. Cove. Deep Cove is on the quiet, heavily forested side of the island, opposite the harbor towns on the east side. The site was discovered and purchased by our new client's grandfather. He fell in love with the cove, a place where the water is warm in summer months and deep enough for docking sailboats. He commissioned the Boston firm, Shepley Bulfinch, to design a house. He cleared sufficient land for the house and a lawn here, on which to land his airplane, and a meadow for a horse, and a meadow for horses. Our client and his cousins spent their childhood summers on the property, swimming, sailing, hiking, and picnicking. They built a treehouse at the edge of the woodlands, right in here, which serendipitously became the site of a future adult playhouse. The property was inherited and used by many family members and therefore belonged to everyone and to no one. Our clients saw the potential to revive the property for their immediate family's use and to build a place for future generations. Over a period of several years, they acquired the interest of other family members and set out to rebuild. They asked us to change everything, but to change nothing. They wanted the house and the garage to be substantially larger, on the same site, overlooking the sound and the pond, without disrupting the essential character of the original. They asked for more bedrooms for overnight guests, places for sports and entertaining, sites for future homes for their children. Over time, their program came to include a pool house, a playhouse, a viewing pavilion for tennis and croquet, a farmyard for equipment and staff, and several other subordinate outbuildings. Let's take a tour of the site as we found it. This is the dirt drive leading from the road to the house site. The pond and maintenance barn are to the right. This is the view from the lawn to the sound looking west. Neighbors often travel by boat back and forth, and of course the summer sun sets in spectacular fashion over this horizon. This is the view from the lawn looking north to the pond and to the pump house on its west bank. This is the site of the treehouse and the future playhouse, with a view northwest to Blue Hill across the sound, off in that direction. This is the meadow looking south. In the initial phase of the project, our client did not own the far half of the meadow. During our walks on the dirt track around the meadow, the value of this land became clear, and it was later acquired. This is the view from the meadow to Deep Cove, a narrow alley carved out of the forest to pull up and store the dock over winter. This glimpse of the cove at the edge of the meadow is an exciting discovery. At the farthest south end of the meadow, there was a remnant of an apple orchard, and with a dirt track that wound its way through it and out back to the road. This is the master plan we presented to secure the commission. We preserved the house site and expanded the house to the north with a pool, pool house, garage, and guest house. We located the playhouse at the end of a path following the coastline. In this location, we felt the building could be largely hidden from the meadow and the sound. We located the farmyard in the corner of the meadow, where it commands the former paddock, and took advantage of the dirt track as a service entrance. There are 4 points of entry to the house: the front door, side door, porte cochere, mudroom door, and the front porch for people arriving by boat. The principal rooms of the house have views of the sound: the living room, dining room, front porch, family room. The pool, which must be fenced in by code and not block the view of the sound, across here, links the house to the pool house. The garage is nearby, hidden by a hedge. The guest house is also nearby, backed up against the woodland with its own driveway and a porch facing the view. The Playhouse program called for a lounge, a bowling alley, a squash court, gym, and guest bedrooms. We were moderately alarmed at the building's size and wondered how we could maintain its subordinate status on the property. To mitigate its size, we created a full basement level, open to the view, for the gym, bowling alley, and squash court. Here's the opening. The lounge, guest rooms, and squash court viewing gallery were located on the first floor. The farmyard is a collection of buildings and shed appendages organized around a courtyard in the customary manner of a working farm. It houses the owner's vehicles, boats, property maintenance equipment, a caretaker's office, and staff bedrooms. About 1 year later, the additional land in the meadow was purchased. It inspired us to join the meadow track to the driveway. So this is the track around the meadow, and we linked it up to the driveway. This also required us to bridge a stream which flowed through the property like this. which we'll see in a minute. We abandoned the idea of a separate service drive and embedded the farm into the woodland, where it also attained a second working courtyard, right here, to supplement the tailored owner's courtyard. Meanwhile, the owner also rethought the location of the playhouse and felt it needed to be more convenient to the house, so we explored the possibility of locating it here, against the pond. Both of these new building locations were challenged by hilly topography, not to mention the proximity of the pond to our basement bowling alley and squash court. We ultimately moved both buildings to other locations. These concerns and further walks on the site led us to this revised site plan, almost 2 years after the time we conceived of the initial plan. Big sites take time to understand. In a new plan, we located the farmyard at the south end of the meadow, where it greets arriving visitors, foreshadowing what is to come. And it is a distant eye catcher for departing visitors. We moved the playhouse again to an even closer location to be convenient for after dinner entertaining. This is the same location as our client's boyhood treehouse. The lounge is oriented with the topography and to Blue Hill, prominent hill in the distance. We located the tennis and croquet courts in a flat clearing, often here, hidden in the woodlands near the narrow view of Deep Cove, where a long walk on a nice day is something to be enjoyed. We expanded the pool house to include second floor guest bedrooms, eliminating the need for a separate house. We moved the garage and parking court away from the pool and added a large garden between the house and garage for vegetables and flowers. In this final site plan, at the owner's suggestion, we moved the squash court out of the basement, you see right here, and moved it to the first floor so that the social activity around it could be integrated with other activities in the building. This is the east side of the house just days before demolition began in September 2014. It has the character of a multi-generational homestead with an accretion of additions built as the family grew in size and prosperity. This kind of house can be seen across the countryside in Maine. This is the west side of the house, where you can see additions that did not respect the original language. These discordant elements helped motivate our client to start over. In this comparison of the original and the new first floor plans, you can see what we preserved, what we expanded, and what we rationalized while preserving the basic partie of the existing house. This illustration of the west facade was part of our initial presentation. It illustrates what one sees when arriving by boat. An old spreading tree providing shade for lunchtime picnics on the side of the house, the living room, the front porch, family room, breakfast room, and screen porch in the pool house overlooking the pool. This illustration of the front porch reveals the strong visual connection between the porch and the adjacent living room, dining room, and family room. From the pool side, the view of the sound is key to the experience. The requisite fence is sunken and hidden by a hedge. The breakfast room and screened porch offer nearby places for dining. This illustration reveals the openness of the family room, breakfast alcove, and kitchen to the surrounding landscape. This is how the house appeared about a month ago. This is the small barn at the end of the house serving the garden. As one approaches the front door, gain a glimpse of the sound beckoning beyond, and the full extent of the house remains to be revealed. Front porch and side entrance are embraced by a garden. The porte cochere beckons family members to enter the inner courtyards. The arbor makes the long walk from the garage back to the mudroom an enjoyable garden experience. It also screens the pool from passing cars. The large vegetable and cutting garden offers an intimate outdoor experience near the house that is in contrast to the vast natural surroundings. Here, nature's been contained and cultivated. No detail escaped our attention, even the garden gates. The image of the house as seen from the water is modest. It does not impose on the landscape. The dock is a busy place during the day with family and friends coming and going. The house sits on the lawn, about 12 feet farther away from the old favorite tree than the original house. In a last-minute consideration, we weighed the risk of damaging the tree during construction against other considerations and decided to move the entire project. The front porch has descending and sliding sashes. This one goes down, these slide open, so it can be closed on a cool and blustery day and open on a warm, calm day. The pool house also has the same feature of sliding doors which fold back in nice weather. The distant porch offers guests staying in the pool house a private corner near a hot water spa and a fire pit to be used on cool evenings. This is the view from the sound from the front porch. Guest porch opens toward the sound and also into the pool area. The house and pool are connected at the mudroom, which is large enough to serve food buffet style during large parties. Right in there. The breakfast room alcove has views in 3 directions, and it's a good place for guests to contemplate the day's activities. The pool house is an extension of the house, and it's an outdoor living room on nice days. The fire pit's one more outdoor gathering place among many offered by the buildings, from which to enjoy evening vistas like this one. The main stair hall welcomes one to the living room and to the family bedrooms upstairs. The living room has 3 exposures and is the original gathering space in the house. The adjacent dining room has windows opening onto the front porch, and at the opposite end of the room, windows overlooking the entry garden and the pool beyond. This is the staff kitchen, in which all the meals for the numerous guests are prepared. Second floor hall in the hyphen links the main block of the house with the family bedrooms. The mural of a pastoral landscape, which decorated the original entry hall, was removed, restored in fragments, and framed and hung on this wall. This is the family bedroom with a fireplace and dormer windows. The bunk room on the 3rd floor is a whimsical room for children, but it's been occupied by as many adults as children. A house like this is supported by a sophisticated climate control system with abundant capacity, backup capacity, and tools for monitoring and servicing its performance. Weaving these systems into the house and making them invisible is an important part of our work. This picture was taken on a day of pre-demolition when the builder was removing fragments of character-defining elements chosen by us as necessary for us to remain faithful to the original design. We saved fragments of the hyphen arcade, the entry hall mural, the eaves, and the mantle. A good part of the construction season is hampered by cold and snow, so the builder rented a warehouse to prefabricate large elements of the house. Here you see mock-ups of the eaves, gutters, and corner pilasters being evaluated for design and approved for construction. Even though every detail was carefully considered and drawn twice, once by us and once by the fabricator, some things got away from us and were only discovered after they were built. Here you see the stringer of the curved back stair with an unexpected and unwanted bump right here. Although the stringer was rationally configured, the offsets were all even, we expected a smoother line. We all pitched in and we corrected it. Let's take a look at the Playhouse. It's a building that combines three strikingly different building forms. It required a long, thin building for the bowling alley. This is a rustic example from a summer camp in the Adirondacks that we felt offered good direction. It also required a tall rectangular building for the squash court. This barn with appendages suggested a way to accommodate the court and integrate it with other wings of the building. And it required a lounge and a second floor bedroom, essentially another small house. Again, we look to the vernacular model of house and barn connected by subordinate structures, like the one pictured here. We organized the building with the house and the front door at the west end. Front doors here, principal views are in that direction. The barn is for the squash court at the east end. This is basically that building right there, and the bowling alley connects them. The gym is appended to the barn so that it encloses a courtyard. An arriving guest might first see the playhouse like this. Someone going to the playhouse to work out or play squash might first see the playhouse like this. The courtyard is another inward-looking place, a place that's in contrast to the panorama that surrounds it, and a place used for entertaining. The woodland path crosses a stream connecting the pond to the cove. Barn doors stand open and welcome people throughout the day. The vista through the building into the courtyard orients one as one arrives. The hall to the squash court and gym is a place for art. Squash court and gallery are for friendly competition and entertaining. Gym is surrounded by windows on three sides, so it's flooded with light and has panoramic views of the landscape. The courtyard leads one to the lounge, this door. During the day, the playhouse recedes into the woodlands, despite being a large building. At night, it is a welcoming destination for drinks and more after-dinner entertaining. The lounge and guest bedrooms are served by an entry stair hall. The hall contains a strangely misplaced phone booth. This is one of the many whimsical features throughout the property which capture the client's sense of humor and the pleasure they derive from entertaining. If you dial the right number, the wall behind the booth opens and lets you into the lounge.
No way.
Yeah. It's
Fantastic.
yeah. This is where you end up. The lounge is an extravagant nightclub with a bar, a movie screen, and disco lighting. It opens onto the terrace, into a screen porch, and into the bowling alley. The bowling alley is a state-of-the-art machine and a rustic interior. Attention to small features like the carving on the fireplace mantle and storage for balls and shoes permeate this project. The frieze carving of local flora and fauna is one of the several artisanal features incorporated into the building. Packing structure, plumbing, wiring, speakers, and other infrastructure into the ceilings and walls requires careful coordination. The process has a trial and error quality to it, and sometimes the errors get built. This happened here. I'll draw your attention to this column, where the steel did not catch up with the wood framing layout, and this column was built in the middle of the room, not in the wall where it belonged. Again, the team pitched in and we moved the column. This is the new stone bridge that brings the driveway down from the meadow through the woodlands up to the house. Let's go to the farm. A farmyard formed by a loose arrangement of barns and sheds is a familiar sight in Maine. We admired the architectural dignity of this example on Long Island, but also felt it might be a little grand for the house it serves. Our plans organized according to the four essential functional purposes: boat storage, property maintenance, owner vehicle storage, and staff quarters. This is how we envisioned the courtyard. And this is how it was completed. The central tree was an afterthought done here in reference to centuries of practice in Europe. The rear service yard is completely hidden from view. We work closely with the landscape architect on the selection of paving and fieldstone materials. This is the entrance to the staff quarters. This is the entrance to the service yard. And the workshop lies between the service yard and the front courtyard. We're looking back out to the central tree. Let's go a little deeper into the property. The tennis pavilion anchors a place for two courts, one for tennis and one for croquet. It's a destination for both contestants and spectators. Again, sports are social occasions. We imagine the building as a woodland structure in a remote location, not visible from any other structure. Therefore, it departs from the high-style character of the house and embodies a primitive, rustic character. Timber framer was engaged to help us design the structure, which I must reveal is reinforced by steel hidden within the wood. During their first summer in the house, the owner commissioned an additional service building to house landscape staff near the farm and additional maintenance equipment below. During the course of the project, the owner imagined converting the pump house into a pavilion with a dock to dock canoes for paddling around on the pond, but they never quite made the commitment to do the work. We hope this becomes a future project. And last, venturing deeper into the surrounding woodlands, the owner built a clay shooting course along a beautiful new path which hugs the coastline and explores the hilly forest. We were commissioned to design a rest shelter midway on the course and a place to store equipment over the winter. We thought this modest cabin was the right expression for it. Before I conclude, I want to say just a few words about the very talented and hardworking team that produced the project. The team was led by Scott Sotil and Soleil Mendez, both graduates of this school. They were assisted by 16 other architects, 3 renderers, and 1 model maker. Collectively, they logged in 38,000 hours over 5 years, or the equivalent of one person working full-time for 19 years to design and oversee the construction of 7 buildings totaling 60,000 square feet. On average, the team made 1 site visit per month over the period of 5 years, from the day we started design to the day the owner slept in the house in June 2017. We've been fortunate. Our client is continuing to develop the property and has asked for our help once again to develop the unbuilt maintenance building and a new greenhouse. Repeat business is very important to us as it accounts for about 1/2 of the projects in our office. Luckily for us, this client is following the pattern of the client who referred us to them. As you prepare to enter the profession and plan your apprenticeship interviews, think about how you can use these occasions to learn more about the art of practice. Remember, an interview is a two-way street. You and the interviewer are both there to learn from each other. I suggest questions like, what is your firm's origin story? How do you describe your firm's culture? What kind of person is a good fit in your firm? What are the paths for personal growth? And how does your firm generate new business? The answers to these questions may reveal the kind of organization behind the person you are meeting and will help you be the best entrepreneur you can be. Thank you and good luck.
Can we take some questions?
Of course. Professor Stroik.
Mark Ferguson, I really enjoyed it. 2 things. First, this amazing project over 5 years and all the complexity, and you kept it, like I tell my students, you kept the same design from day one. No.
Yeah. Yes and no.
It evolved. But anyway, same vision. How much did the interior designer have to do with that? And then number 2, could you talk a little bit more about this whole aspect, what other professions have to do amazing work with a lot of money without the, you said it, without the facsimile, without the prototype? We don't get to do the prototype. What other, are we the only ones?
Monumental sculpture,
Okay,
right? So you make small scale maquettes.
okay,
But you can't, architecture's interiors. You have to walk into them. I can't tell you how difficult it is to explain to a client who is not visually literate. None of them are. I mean, they are to a degree, but they cannot translate a drawing or a model or a rendering into a room. They could look at a rendering of this room and they would have no idea how big it is, whether it's tall or deep, dark or light. That's why 3D modeling is very powerful. And to be able to manipulate it in front of a client is really great. It's hard to do, but it's really great. And the people, and this is something that I'm encouraging the younger people in the office to get good at, is to be able to sit in a room with a client and change the model. Because they'll say, we'll talk about, should we make the building taller or wider, all those little things. And if you can put them in the room, you'd say, well, how would this room feel if the ceiling was 4 feet higher? Would that be a good move? Should we do that? In 60 seconds, you can demonstrate it on a model. And since everyone perceives the world through their television set, putting all the architecture on the television set. So we walk through the model on TV. Sad to say, I'm not a TV watcher, but we use a lot of TV. Yes.
I guess a lot of these drawings are beautiful, and how do you balance that use of technology to get the client to understand what is the role of the drawings to help them?
It's very easy because, as you probably know well, these drawings look a lot more real than a computer model. To make a computer model look real, that it has atmosphere, character, takes a tremendous amount of time. So as good as the models are, there are these abstractions. They look like plastic. I have plenty of clients who can't read them, even though it's 3D, because they're reading them literally. And they see it's black lines and gray planes, and it sort of looks like plastic. And they don't tell me right away. And sometimes, I sink the boat by thinking that I've sold the design, and meanwhile, they're screaming inside because they think it's hideous. So the drawings are very valuable. These kinds of drawings that have the furnishings. And we can do this to help tell a client's story. If they have certain things, they're in the drawings. Or they have aspirations to acquire certain things, whether it's art or furniture, or there's an important tree. It's in the drawing. And so it gives them an anchor, something that they know, and there it is, and they can see how everything relates to it.
These monochrome pencil drawings are really beautiful. But I'm wondering if the choice of monochrome is deliberate. Is it because you were keeping a question of color?
It's an excellent question. One, I'm just partial to black and white. So there's a taste factor. It's much faster to do the pencil. Like one of these drawings, the more refined ones take a week, but a rough one could be done in a day or less than a day. So we can do multiple iterations. Also, color has so many associations, and it can evoke very strong reactions. And while we're trying to talk about form, which we are usually in these drawings, it's nice to tamp down on the reaction that somebody might have to a particular color. So
that's interesting.
it gives us a little room to move as we go on.
But don't some people demand it? I want to see color
They do.
from day one.
We do, and we'll make a color rendering.
Right.
But they're usually flat, yes.
You said you had renderers, so they work specifically on the renderings, and model maker works specifically on the model. Did those people Are those architects that have sort of become exclusively that, or they come from, do you hire them from like art schools or?
Excellent question. So we have a renderer who's an architect who really loves rendering and and is a very good architect, but said, this is just not what I want to do with the rest of my life. So he's a renderer. We have a fine arts painter who took a job as an assistant, as a somebody to file papers and move boxes around in the office. And he's a very entrepreneurial guy, and he learns new skills. And he would come to work for 8 hours a day and go home and paint. And it was exhausting. And then he realized that we're making illustrations and that communicating with pictures was something that was integral to our business. And he said, maybe I could color some renderings. And the first year or so, his work was terrible. It was kind of think of the first color rendering that you did. It was not that good. Because there was something about fine art painting that somehow did not translate into illustration. But then he decided he was going to learn. And we had another man who apprenticed. He learned rendering the black and white drawings. He learned from another person, and he apprenticed. And he became very good at it. And he was the tutor for this younger person who said, I want to become an illustrator in your firm. And after about 2 years, this is what he can do.
That's amazing. Looks like slate leather. Is that his teacher? No.
Arthur Dutton was the person who taught him.
Arthur Dutton.
Who just retired, turned 65, and he said, I'm going to go write a novel. He said, I've always wanted to be a writer. So, here's the interesting thing. I'm talking about career paths and entrepreneurship. Here's a guy who rendered because he could. He did it he was like the fine arts painter. He took a job setting up perspectives for a renderer. And he did that for years. We discovered he was referred to us by somebody who left the firm. And he said, this guy, might need another little lift in his career. We brought him in, and he showed us an array of color drawings, but he had one pencil drawing like this. And we said, if you can do that for us, you're in. So rendering comes from a multitude of backgrounds. I understand that a lot of architecture grads go work for people that are designing websites because they've got some facility and interest in computer modeling. Weird. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't recommend it.
The black and white rendering a long tradition of these. He relied on a renderer, I'm sure, but
Auto vendors.
Right.
Did a lot of those.
Chester Price.
Chester Price.
So that's the book that's always open. That's the touchstone.
Really?
Yeah, they're
Chester
beautiful.
Price?
There's enough. They're suggestive enough to be atmospheric, but precise enough to really show detail. Michael.
I thought it was beautiful thought, beautifully illustrated. You talked about it so simply and so elegantly, and so pragmatically. And if you go through the layers, you told us a lot about your frankness about failure, and how failure is a huge teacher in all of this. And we all want to win, and everything in society is all about that. But failure is actually the only way that you can actually get to the next stage that it actually affects on. You talked about business sense. You talked about a very quiet, pragmatic matter. The drama of the day-to-day is still there. That you can get to this point of tranquility that this image presents in all of the culture of the firm. The other thing is, in talking about it so pragmatically, you move one building here, you move the farm there, the road this way, that way, the organization of the house. If you go a few layers down, and you look at the principles that appear to have guided you are quite urbane in a sense. That, where does the main house and its typology is far different, as is the character than this house. And the hierarchies, the formal hierarchies that are established, the linkages, the street squares and blocks, if you will, of the site, even though it's a rural site, how it's connected to this larger intellectual construct. We didn't talk about it, but one can see it. And it's not a critique, I'm just trying to illustrate something to the students. In a practice, the intellectual construct is given. I mean, you've got to do that. All the other things that you talked about, the pragmatics, the business sense, the renderings, the teamwork, the educational aspect of what you do for your employees, all that is incredibly complex enterprise. And at the end, I just think you just did a beautiful job. It can seem really simple, but I just hope that our students can take this and project their own careers, which is I think how you intended it, to think of that complexity, think of that beauty, and live on. I thought it was terrific.
Thank you.
I know what I exactly I just said. But,
Well, you said that we took command of the entire site. It wasn't just plopping buildings down, that there was actually a vision. It's both a procession about how you're going to understand the property. It's a village where buildings have their place. Think of the landscape as fabric and the buildings as monuments. We're making space with the buildings around them and inside of them. The connections across landscapes to other buildings are important. Honoring the landscape is a super important thing up there. And doing it not only in the character of the buildings, but also just how they sit with the rest of the landscape, that they don't impose. But you're right, designing this, I had no idea. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. This happened to me by accident. But I realized as I got into it that it requires design, that it's not just a bunch of people with similar ideas working together, with one person in charge bossing everybody else around. That works at a certain level and it works for a certain period of time, but it doesn't get you to, you can't do this if that's the way you're set up. So how do you get, our business evolved. It changed dramatically. The way we structured ourselves, the way we thought about what we were doing, what we thought we were doing changed when we went from 10 people to 25 people, when we went from 25 to 40, 40 to 60. Every time it changed in numbers, you said, the old way of doing things doesn't work anymore. We realized this, a couple of years ago, that Oscar and I had gotten just so far from everything that was happening on the ground that we had to do it differently. That's why we have 10 people now. And most people think this is ridiculous, that we have 10 people deciding on a consensus basis what to do, making important business decisions.
Why do you do that?
Because you know what? It keeps everybody cohesive. There's very little friction in the office. The competition, the friendly competition that happens among people, that's normal. It happens in the studio, it happens in the office. It's healthy in a certain way, but then it can become unhealthy. And actually, I want to work in a place where everybody's enjoying each other's company and they're enjoying the work. If you get every job, that's a little less important to me than enjoying the jobs that we do get. Although we do try to get every job. I am super competitive. But I can't.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Yes.
You hire a lot of people from our school, so there must be positive things about students here that you appreciate. Is there sort of like something you could say would be like a general thing, like a critique of Notre Dame graduates that we could work on improving before we graduate?
Oh, that's a really good question, but you asked it in front of all the wrong people.
That's fair.
we can step out.
We can handle it. So we can handle it. What's our weaknesses?
I think this is the weakness of any grad, but maybe it's a little augmented because of the skills that you learn that separate you from every other school in the country. And that is this empowerment, this feeling of that you can really do almost anything that's put in front of you. There's a certain hubris,
Really?
I think. And so now it varies person to person, right? So it depends on how you carry that awareness that you have some very powerful skills. So, you know, people that don't handle that so well, they're maybe a little, think they're more important than they are. So I would just say modesty. And I suffered from this as a recent grad. I thought I had a lot of answers. And that was the disappointment that I learned I didn't have any of the answers. I was nobody in an office. Intellectually, you could probably spend a little more time in the 20th century just to know what's around you. I think that's because that's the world as it is. I think if you don't see the world as it is, you can't change it. You know, so if you're delusional, you know, you think the world's some other way. Does that resonate?
Because you live in New York.
You know, well, there's that. That is a problem.
That is part of it.
I do realize that.
And you build in beautiful places.
I
like
do realize
Maine.
that. I am in a tiny little bubble. I do realize that.
I think you said about 25% of your office is Notre Dame alumnus. To what degree does your office undertake education in areas that you feel they?
You don't do enough, but we've always said that a learning environment is the best work environment. If you're not learning, job's boring. You know, it's dead. But if the job is an opportunity to learn something new, we've got something going on. So sharing information across teams is really important. How do we do that? We do it in some formal ways. We have design critiques and peer reviews. So theoretically, every project that gets built has a peer review by one or more people who look at the job at a couple points: design development, working drawings. Somebody has looked at the entire set of drawings and made a presentation to the team. The other thing, things in early design get pinned up on the wall, and we have design critiques. Everyone's invited to come. And it's very interesting. People didn't used to talk. It was a setting like this. I'm presenting the project. The rest of the office is out here. It took a long time for people to say anything. The bosses are sitting around. It wasn't conducive. So now we have a moderator who does the Q&A to bring out the conversation. And it's remarkable because I've never seen a crit where a team hasn't gotten at least 3 good ideas. It only took an hour. I was at a real impasse with a project with a very difficult client 2 weeks ago. And on a Monday morning, I said I needed an emergency crit. And I got the entire studio at 5:30 to look at what we had on the wall. And by 6:15, I had 3 good ideas.
You heard about 20 ideas, though.
Well, you get 20 ideas,
Right.
but you know, 3 of them are actually useful.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of them you totally disagree with, and you said, we're not doing that.
Right. That's great.
But it's interesting because in our office, here's an interesting question. How does design happen? Who designs the buildings? Well, it depends. There are a few people they have extra talent. That's their aptitude. Design is their aptitude. They can see things 3-dimensionally. They can envision rooms and buildings, you know, very easily. It comes easy to them. So they do a lot of design. There are others for whom it's very difficult. Very difficult. And they're much more effective at following through, developing the design, figuring out how to engineer it, how to document it. There's a lot of work that goes on in an office. Most of what we do is working with people, is helping other people be effective. You know, it's not telling somebody, do this, do that. It's everybody, managing themselves and cohering around a shared idea. So design happens by everybody on the team. And then there's, of course, the partners like me. We'll say, we're not doing that, and I want you to try this. Yes.
What's your schematic process like? So is it collaborative? Before you sit down with the client, do you present maybe 2 or 3 concepts, or do you try to rely on one, or actually presenting that? And then to what level of development do you use for that? One of those first meetings, first schematic produce, schematic production or the concepts? Yes.
Well, it depends on the circumstance. What we produce depends on the circumstance. Here we knew we were in a competition, so we went way overboard. It made no sense for the amount of money that we earned on this. It made no sense to do what we did. But we knew that this was renderings and site plans were necessary to make a convincing presentation. Schematic design happens right after I get the phone call. So I'll just tell you a recent project. Got the phone call, said, okay, we'll visit the house. So it's a renovation. We visited the house, surveyed it, went back to the airport, sat in the bar, ordered beer. The napkin sketch thing. So we said it could go like this or it could go like that. It's sort of obvious. Oftentimes I think it's obvious. And that also can be a liability when it seems so obvious to you and inevitable that you just go down that path and you sort of maybe close the door on other things. So we translate that into, I have a meeting on Friday with this client, first meeting, initial meeting. We'll see plans and an elevation and a model, a SketchUp model of the stair hall, which is the sort of key to unlocking everything else in the plan. I think the most important thing with initial meetings with clients is that they understand that you're listening to them, that you're understanding what they're saying, and most importantly, what they're not saying. How do you read their minds? You can't, but you can kind of intuit, just because you've been there before, what people might not be saying. I try as a litmus test, using images, photographs of other buildings, places. What do you like? What don't you like? Tell me, I hate this, I love that. That's very helpful in an initial meeting. So sometimes doing nothing is the right thing to do. There are other occasions where, and I don't think this is such a good idea, we go in with 5 options, 10 options. I think after 3, your head's spinning. You don't know what's what.
Yeah.
And I think it's better to go in with, I think 3 is an amazing number. Go in with 3 and know which one you think is best.
Right. But do you always do that? Or you sometimes go in with 1?
Friday, I'm going in with 1 because the owner sent me a doodle. The owner sent me the realtor's plan with a few scratchy marks on it. I said, yeah, you could kind of do that. But then I reflected on the scheme that I thought they should do. And I realized that it doesn't do some important things that they want to have happen in the house. And even though it makes sense to me, and it's architecturally a little more sensible to me, I said, well, it's not doing some important things that they need. So if I show up with this and say, this is the answer, I might lose the job. So their idea wasn't bad. I'm just going to make it was an okay idea. I'm going to make it great. And that's the idea that's going to be on the table.
They'll probably like it because I gave you the doodles.
Yeah, they'll say, oh, I can see that you understood the doodle. It's not the house I imagined. It's better. But I can see my doodle is behind it.
Maybe one last question.
All right. Thank you. You've been an amazing audience. Thank you. It's a lot there.